The moment I saw the silver sedan parked beside my curb, a cold warning moved through me. My parents had not visited my home in nearly a year, and after everything that had happened between us, they knew they were not welcome. They did not step out of the car. They waited until I noticed the wrapped package on my doorstep, then slowly drove away. A white card was tied beneath the ribbon, and in my mother's handwriting were 4 words that made my stomach tighten: "Do not make a scene." My name is Emily Carter, and I was 32 years old when that package changed everything. I carried it inside because the message felt less like a request and more like another command from my childhood. I set it on the entryway table and cut the ribbon. The first thing I saw was a photograph of my son, Caleb, asleep in his own bedroom. The second was a duplicate key to our house. Beneath those items was a thick envelope stamped with the name of a family court attorney. My hands shook so badly that I almost dropped the envelope, and I called 911 before reading another page. 2 officers arrived within minutes, separated the contents, and instructed me not to touch anything else. While they examined the package, my husband, Daniel, came through the front door. He stopped when he saw the uniforms, then looked at the open box, and the color drained from his face. "Please tell me they did not do this," he whispered. His reaction frightened me more than the photograph because it meant he knew something I did not. One of the officers asked him what he meant, and Daniel swallowed hard before explaining that 3 weeks earlier my father, Richard, had approached him outside his office with documents for what he called an emergency guardianship plan. Richard had claimed it was meant to protect Caleb if Daniel and I were ever both hospitalized. But Daniel had refused to sign and had not told me because he believed my parents were only trying to provoke me. Officer Harris pulled on gloves and continued searching the box. Beneath the envelope he found a small digital recorder, a flash drive, several photographs, a child's wooden train, and a stuffed bear. The train belonged to Caleb, and the bear had disappeared after our last visit to my parents' house months earlier. When Harris lifted it, a faint floral scent drifted into the room. It was my mother's perfume, the same perfume I remembered lingering outside my bedroom door when she listened to my private phone calls as a teenager. The photographs were far worse than the first one. One showed Caleb eating breakfast at our kitchen island. Another showed him walking near his school. A third had been taken through the fence behind the playground. The dates printed in the corners covered nearly 2 months. In one image, the reflection in a window revealed part of the photographer's face. It was not my mother or father, it was a man I had never seen before. The officers immediately treated the situation as more than a family dispute. They called for a supervisor and an evidence technician, then asked whether my parents had ever possessed a key to our home. I explained that my father had helped us replace a backdoor lock the previous year. We had changed the front lock after cutting contact, but we had not replaced the back one. Daniel closed his eyes as the implication settled over us. The envelope contained a draft petition requesting temporary guardianship of Caleb. According to the attached statements, I had missed medical appointments, left my son unattended, and suffered unpredictable emotional episodes that made our home unsafe. Every accusation was false. One statement carried what appeared to be Daniel's signature, and he examined it before saying immediately that it was forged. Another document appeared to be a letter from a therapist I had never met, describing sessions that had never occurred and recommending that Caleb be removed from my care. Officer Harris asked about the digital recorder, and Daniel recognized the model. 2 months earlier he had found a similar device beneath the passenger seat of our car. He had assumed it belonged to a coworker and had thrown it away when no one claimed it. This recorder had a strip of black adhesive on the back and a label reading Kitchen 2. Harris placed it in an evidence bag without turning it on, and the label suggested that another device, perhaps Kitchen 1, might also exist. The officers conducted a protective sweep of the house and discovered a tiny camera hidden inside a smoke detector facing the kitchen table. Another device was concealed behind a hallway vent near Caleb's bedroom. Neither device was connected to our Wi-Fi network. Each stored footage locally on a memory card, which meant someone had intended to return and retrieve the recordings. Faint scratches around the back door lock suggested repeated entry. That night we left the house and stayed with Daniel's sister. Caleb was told that a plumbing problem had forced us to spend the night elsewhere. He accepted the explanation, but before falling asleep he asked whether his grandparents knew where we were. The question broke my heart because it revealed how deeply my mother had woven herself into his world despite our efforts to create distance. The next morning, Detective Laura Bennett met us at the station and explained that the memory card recovered from the hallway camera contained scanned documents, voice recordings, and photographs collected over 6 years. One recording captured a conversation between my mother and me in the hospital after Caleb was born. I remembered the conversation, but I had never known it had been recorded. After I left the room, my father's voice could be heard saying, "She will agree once she realizes how little control she has." The files also included copies of our tax returns, Daniel's work schedule, Caleb's school calendar, and notes describing ordinary family moments as evidence of neglect. A canceled dentist appointment was labeled medical negligence. A babysitter arriving 10 minutes late was described as child left unsupervised. A photograph of me holding a glass of wine at a holiday dinner was labeled substance concern. My parents had spent years constructing a false narrative. Our attorney, Rebecca Lawson, reviewed the guardianship petition and identified additional signs of fraud. The therapist's license number belonged to a real professional, but the name on the letter did not match the state registry. The notarization stamp on Daniel's supposed statement had been reported stolen months earlier. Someone had assembled the petition using pieces of legitimate identities to make it appear credible. That afternoon, Detective Bennett informed us that the unknown man in the school photograph had been identified as Travis Reed, a private investigator whose license had been suspended for illegal surveillance complaints. Phone records showed repeated contact between Reed and a number registered to my father's business. Before we could fully process the news, my mother left me a voicemail. Her tone was calm and almost affectionate. She offered to help with Caleb and warned that a judge would care about stability. I forwarded the message to Detective Bennett without responding. The situation escalated when Rebecca discovered that my parents had attempted to file the guardianship petition that very morning. Their filing claimed that Daniel and I had disappeared with Caleb after a domestic crisis, and that my parents were the only relatives capable of providing immediate stability. They had transformed our call for help into evidence against us. A hearing was scheduled for the following afternoon. My parents arrived at court dressed as if they were attending a social event. Their attorney described them as devoted grandparents acting out of concern for Caleb's safety. Rebecca then presented the original photographs beside the cropped versions attached to the petition. Images that had been labeled as evidence of neglect clearly showed Daniel or other adults nearby when viewed uncropped. When the judge asked why the photographs had been altered, my mother stood and attempted to explain. She said I had always been impulsive and that someone needed to plan for Caleb's future. Rebecca asked whether she had authorized anyone to enter our home. My mother replied, "A mother does what is necessary when her daughter refuses help." The statement was not a full confession, but it shattered the carefully crafted image she had presented to the court. The judge denied the emergency guardianship request, issued a temporary no-contact order, and referred the suspicious documents to the court's fraud unit. Outside the courtroom, my father lost his composure and accused me of destroying the family's reputation. For most of my life, his words would have silenced me. Instead, I answered calmly that the evidence would speak for itself. Minutes later, my extended family began receiving a message from my mother claiming that I had suffered a breakdown and manipulated the police. She had attached what she believed was supporting evidence. Instead, she accidentally attached a photograph taken from the hidden camera in our kitchen. The image spread through the family before she could delete it. When my cousin sent me a screenshot of the message, I stared at the photograph for a long moment. The hidden camera angle was unmistakable. My mother had spent years controlling the story about our family, but this time the truth had attached itself to her own message.